the number one challenge that we have set out to address is the problem of food waste. Globally, a third of all the food we produce each year gets thrown away, which is worth over $1 trillion. Meanwhile, we have 800 million people who go to bed hungry every night, who incidentally could be fed on a quarter of the food that is wasted in the Western world. And as if all that weren't bad enough, food waste, if it were to be a country, would be the third largest source of greenhouse gas emissions after the USA and China. So the environmental impact of food waste is absolutely devastating. And in fact, something called Project Drawdown, which is a global initiative with hundreds of the world's leading climate change scientists, in March of this year, re-released their data identifying the top 100 solutions to the climate crisis. And in position number 1 is reducing food waste. And it came above electric cars, above solar power, and above a plant-based diet. So food waste is clearly an enormous problem. But what most people don't realize is that in a country such as the UK, the US and Western Europe, but sadly increasingly elsewhere, half of all food waste takes place in the home. So that means that we as individuals are half of that enormous problem that I have just outlined. And so OLIO exists to solve that half of the problem. And so we're a free app that connects neighbors to give away their spare food to someone living nearby who would like it.
So what are some of so now to the business, right? You're trying to develop a successful yet a profitable social impact business. What are some of the challenges that you have faced while developing this social impact business?
Well, the first challenge is, how do you grow an early stage startup with very limited resources, with a very small budget? And we solved that problem by developing our ambassador program. So we now have over 50,000 ambassadors around the world. These are people who are passionate about the OLIO mission. They believe, like us, that food and other household items should be given away, not thrown away. And so we equip those ambassadors with digital materials, but also physical materials as well. So posters, letters, and flyers for them to help spread the word about OLIO in their local community. And we have found that that model has really helped us to grow in a very authentic, but also cost-effective way. The other major challenge that we encountered very early on was that we found that our early adopters hated food waste, and so they didn't have anything to give away. And we had somewhat naively hoped that local businesses would use the OLIO app to give away their spare at the end of the day, to bring extra traffic into their stores, to result in cross-sell, upsell, improve standing in their local community. But we found that they didn't use the app because they didn't have the time, quite frankly. And so a food sharing app with no food on it is obviously not very helpful to anybody. And so we solved that conundrum by taking the people, the early adopters who had time but no food waste, and match them with the businesses that had lots of food waste and no time, and we created our Food Waste Heroes program. And this is a program whereby we will, in the app, dynamically recruit, train in our proprietary food safety management system, and then also match those volunteers with their local store. And those volunteers will then provide a service to the store whereby they will collect their unsold food at the end of the day, take it home, add it to the app. Within minutes, the neighbors are requesting it. Minutes later, their neighbors are popping around and picking it up. And so that really helps us solve the problem of, how do we get OLIO sort of kick-started in any particular area? How do we make sure that there's always food on the app?
So it is a B2B to C model. So you've got your...
Well, not quite. So everything on OLIO is C2C. All the sharing is neighbor to neighbor. But in roughly half the instances, the supply has come from my own home. And in half the instances, I have popped out of the house and got the supply from a local business and brought it back to my house to distribute out to the community.
Oh, right.
So it's kind of B2C to C, if that makes sense. And then C to C as well.
Right. I see. You mentioned that it is a free app. So that's great. Yes. So what is your commercialization model? How do you make money out of this social impact business?
So we charge the businesses for the service that we provide to enable them to have zero food waste stores. So at the moment, they are paying a waste contractor to take that food off to landfill or perhaps anaerobic digestion. Instead, they are now paying us to ensure that food is fully redistributed into the local community and eaten rather than thrown away. But going forward, we will be experimenting with the freemium business model to monetize the C2C sharing.
I see. That's interesting. And I would assume that this is like a subscription model that you have, or okay.
So we don't right now. So to
Mm-hmm.
date, we are just generating revenues from the Food Waste Heroes program, so from the businesses, because we have been really focused on building out a delightful product and user experience, and we've been focused on kind of growth and engagement rather than monetization of the C2C sharing at this point in time. But we anticipate that next year we will be introducing a subscription style model whereby our super users will pay for access to premium features.
Would you like to share with us also your journey? Did you face many challenges trying to reach out to investors who would, have the same vision as you and also would like to support a startup like yours? Are there any challenges that you have faced? Yeah.
In a word, yes, lots of challenges. So being a female founded, virtually pre-revenue, tech for good startup makes fundraising extremely challenging, and especially because we're sort of creating the category. So there isn't much kind of FOMO going on amongst the investor community. So we have, however, successfully raised financing 4 times, and it's every time it's been very, very challenging. But I think every startup founder will tell you that fundraising is one of the most challenging, if not the most challenging thing that they have to do. In particular, what we have discovered is that there's an enormous gap in the market, because the classic Silicon Valley style venture capitalists who have the sort of amount of capital to deploy, and they're happy to take the level of risk associated with a business like OLIO, because we want to get to 1 billion users within the next 10 years. So we absolutely have the kind of scalability and ambition that would suit that type of investor. But we've found that for the most part, they're not particularly mission obsessed, and every investor who joins OLIO needs to be mission obsessed. So they sort of have the capital, but not the mission obsession. And then on the other hand, there's this very new, nascent, but fast growing area of impact investors who are absolutely mission obsessed. But what we have found is that they don't have that much capital to deploy. And so that means that they're actually incredibly risk averse. So they are generally tending to back businesses that are definitely already revenue generating and ideally sort of getting close to profitability. And so we found ourselves sort of stuck between those two worlds. And what we really need are impact investors who have significant amounts of capital to deploy, so that they can really back those sort of moonshot investment opportunities, of which OLIO is one, which is all about impact at scale.
I see. What would be your advice then to other female founders in terms of fundraising? How did you manage to overcome those challenges? Yeah, being a mother yourself, and then it's a startup with no revenue. How would you convince your investors?
I think that one of the most important things to do is to start the fundraising journey extremely early. So I have realized that I need to always be raising. So every single week I am speaking to investors. So these are not face-to-face meetings, these are sort of quick calls, but I'm constantly networking, sort of following that spider's webs of recommendations and referrals. And the reason for that is because I know that by the time we go out to market, we need to have already filtered through the enormous sort of marketplace of investors to find the ones that are the best match for us. And that is a learning that has come through our experience of fundraising. And then I think the other thing is it's really, really important if for female founders and also for impact founders to make sure that the business case and the financials of your startup are really sort of front and center to your deck and to your pitch deck, because you are having to sort of counter the stereotypes or the perception, which might be that you're not that commercial. So you almost need to kind of over-index on that to convince investors that you actually are a good commercial investment.